A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain.
Well, it's a beautiful Tuesday morning here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Yeah. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning from Abuja and the Federal Capital Territory. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusuf.
Well, what do we know? Economy. It's always a big talk.
Oh, yes.
But I hope that someday, maybe the time is now, when we will make that a major topic or a major factor in whoever wants to be president or governor.
Absolutely. And, the major topics in Nigeria now, no brainer, security, the economy. But the interesting thing is both of them are actually very related. I mean, you could talk about how, and I know this is debatable, right, but how the standard of living sometimes, what pushes some people into crime, that is not, excusable anyway. But, people will tell you that the poverty rate in Nigeria is a big deal, which is why you see a lot of people engaging in it, or it's easy to actually recruit people into this. But you know what? The point we're trying to make this morning is about inflation rates. And I know I heard someone calling another person sugar this morning. And you know what hit me? The price of sugar has gone up. So you might want to change that. But it shows how valuable the person is. And this is on the back of the inflation rates.
Almost everywhere you turn.
Absolutely.
One commodity or the other.
They've gone up. Sometimes even double. And inflation rate just went up after 8 months. And it's not shocking. It's not just the price of bread, not just the price of cereal, across board. And we have 15.63 now, which is largely driven by food inflation. A lot of people have breakfast options this morning, and I imagine that people will start choosing carefully, or have been choosing carefully, because of what the market prices are saying.
But no matter how you carefully try to choose, you just can't choose carefully enough.
But the president has said that we're not cultivating our arable land, even though figures is about 41% what we're doing. So is there a solution in that?
I don't even know where to begin with this conversation.
Are you the one that called someone sugar?
Well, actually, to be very honest, honey is even more expensive. So maybe we'll go with honey going forward. But yesterday, we're talking about this whole inflation rate thing. It's not new in our nation. The question that you would just want to ask is, what is the issue? How come we have not been able to put a lid on it? Guys, I've been having this thinking and all of that about agriculture. And I went and checked some books, and I found out that at the very least, we have had 20 agricultural intervention programs in this country. Successive. 20. Whether it's a major campaign or, a minor program like the DFRI, like even the Jonathan government also had a program for agriculture. And all of these, are always aimed at improving our production capacity, trying to jumpstart the agricultural sector and help to stem the tide of the rising inflation. And when you talk about inflation, you're talking about inflation from the economic perspective. How about food inflation? Let's just stay with food inflation.
Which is driving the main inflation.
Which is driving the main, that's been on for a good number of time, for quite a while. Question is it intractable? Is it impossible for us to do this thing? Operation Feed the Nation, for instance, was supposed to ramp up urban agriculture. And guess what? We found out during the Jonathan administration that part of the reason the Operation Feed the Nation and Green Revolution programs didn't work well is because they weren't designed to be long-lasting. The question that you want to ask is, what are we doing now? And what are we going to do differently? One common thread in all of the agricultural programs we have had, if you ask me, is that they are all government-enabled, government-empowered. The difference that is being made now with this SABZ intervention of AFDB is that it's going to be government-enabled, private sector empowered. Will that help us? I sincerely hope so. Maybe then we'll be able to bring down these inflation figures. Food inflation goes down, a significant number of our problems that will be solved. But then, how do we make it sustainable? That's another question altogether. Papa?
Well, I have just first to say that, in future, we'll make sure that our conversation is really private. So all those people eavesdropping, can mind their ears. Anyways, about inflation and the price of sugar and the price of honey in the market, I've been asking myself, you know, if we really all shouldn't embrace this 4-day work week and see how we can dedicate a 5th day to agriculture. And that's all of us, including those of us who are wearing suits, so to speak. Because in many ways, we have to ask what has been the orientation of many young people towards agriculture. Our production, our productivity is declining on the farm. We know that. It's a fact. We're feeling it in the markets. Many times when women go to the market and they come back home and they complain about how expensive things are, they say, Aisha won't put money on the plate and offer it to people to eat. No matter how much money you make, at the end of the day, you will still use it to buy food. The most basic commodity you will use your money to buy is food. No matter how poor you are, the first thing you want is food, some clothes on your back. Your clothes you can always recycle as many times as possible, and a roof over your head. You can build a mud house, but food you must eat. And when we look at the effect that this has on malnutrition, on the diets of many families, on the future generation that is coming up, we know that the problem we have on our hands is a big one. It might look like something we're discussing on the TV and is going to pass, but the trickle-down effect on a generation of young people is enormous. I'll give you an instance. A mother goes to the market, she can no longer afford to buy meat. Or maybe she decides, okay, fish is the family protein. And then it's no longer possible to buy fish. Maybe she opts for something cheaper, you know, maybe eggs. And now I went to the shop and eggs, a crate of eggs is now 1,800, 1,900. And I was asking, sorry, is that for the large size? They said, no, the large size of eggs is now 2,300. And I'm asking, how many families can afford to buy a crate of egg for 2,300? What is going to be the effect of that on the diet of the children, for instance? Some families already have to split an egg between 2 children. Will they still be able to afford 1 egg for 2 children? Now, imagine that the children are not able to get the vitamins that they need, the protein that they need from these food items. What you'll have are malnourished children. The federal government started a program some time ago to feed children in primary schools. It was targeted at bringing children from many, you know, the urban poor to make sure that they're off the streets and also to give them some nutrition. It was a very good plan in many layers. And I think the price of food which they had for those caterers was 70 naira per plate. The truth is, at 70 naira per plate, you will not be able to make a meal that has any substantial protein in it. So if the plan was to tackle malnutrition, that plan is down the drain. So what we're talking about in terms of food inflation is not just making the monies, because they always say inflation is a thief. It's a thief of value. And the way we can restore value is to become more productive. So if the general plan is for everybody, no matter how highly placed you are, is for you to own a farm and be seen doing something in your farm to add to the general productivity and bring down the prices of food. The most painful part of this, really, and it really, really pains me, is that the people who are truly productive, the farmers who will still manage to get us the little that we have at our tables, are not the people who get the value. You know, they're not the ones who are profiting from these high prices of food. Because if they were, I can tell you that by now agriculture will be very lucrative. A lot of people want to go into it. It is the middlemen. They're the ones who are profiting from it. That's what is most painful about this. But I think that we all have a duty to see how we can either get productive in terms of going to the farms or being a part of the value chain in such a way that we bring down the prices. And it might sound like a very funny idea that we should have a 4-day work week, but I think a number of states have experimented with it to say that one last day, it's not that you're going to sit in your house, it is for you to get productive on the farm. I don't know, it might sound a little awkward, but let us see if it does come to life. And the states that have implemented it, let us ask what has been the productivity been in those states. Gentlemen.
You know, yeah, very interesting, but just a few things. You know, when you guys talk about government had a plan for agri some time ago, but it was designed on a short-term basis. And you ask yourself, So why would they design a program for the short term if they can afford to do it for the long term? Systems. If you were sustainable, they'll do it for the long term.
Just a quick one on that. They are not usually designed for short term, but every successive government dumps the one of the previous government.
Or the successive government. That effect.
Yeah, the successive government will drop that one and come up with its own.
And you know, have you noticed that time and again, different governments come with different plans, trying to see what they can do to make things work. But at the end of the day, people ask basic questions. Why can't we feel it? And then when the inflation rate 15.63% after 8 years of rising,
no, 8 months of dropping,
8 months, and then now you see this, and they say, look, they're not surprised at that. Systems. So we had people who have told us here, if you look at the property market, a lot of those prices and figures you see, they are artificial. You can't plan even as basic as moving from point A to point B on a public transports, the regular ones, and you think the prices will be fixed. It can never be fixed. They are arbitrary prices. Where are the systems? Where are the structure to ensure that whatever programs or strategies you put in place reflects and the systems can sustain it? CBN comes up with different programs time and again. The DMBs, deposit money banks, there are usually questions as to why aren't they implementing some of these things? And then you have CBN coming up with those plans and programs. They implementing it, and you thought, wow, well, that's because DMBs, if they won't do what they have to do, well, CBN has to do something at the end of the day. FG wants to come up with plans for basic people. What do? They come up with the register. Everybody asking questions. How authentic is this register? Systems. So these are the things. If we don't have those basics right, no matter the programs you come up with, look, you will always find that there are gaping holes in all of those things. Why aren't they just being sustainable? So that's the thing. Anybody can increase price. Just go out there today and tell, no, they blame it on the dollar. No system, no structure. So these are the price,
even the price of vegetable.
But there's a low-hanging fruit here, and just quickly, is the fact that, we're used to essentially doing things ourselves, as it were. You provide your power, your water, and the rest. My dad did this very funny thing. He got some layers. Okay, so they essentially lay eggs for him. So he's got a mini poultry in his house, sort of, and he's got a little farm just behind the house. So he gets his vegetables, gets the eggs and all that. And, little things like that can actually go a long way into buffering what we're going through. Not a lot of people might be able to afford, layers. But, over time, it's something we can do to buffer these things. I think that might help.
Well, yeah. So, look, that's why we say, look, you have to have people who will come up and tell you. You need to be sure they understand what the problem is in the first place. Not people who will come and be giving you political gunshots or political sound bites. And then you go away, or we go vote, we do the same thing year on year, every 4 years, it remains the same. Look at some countries. They make sure that basic things such as food, people can afford it. Because they know, even if we can't provide every other thing, if we don't give them food, you know what a hungry man can do? They will do anything to get food. But over here, even the basics, the basic food items, they're going over the roof. You have several intervention programs, ministerial committees. They've told us what the problem is. What about the answer? Well, guys, you're well in this, so we all feel it. So you might as well tell us what you think about all of this. But yes, we will go ahead and have a look at some of the dailies now. We'll start with New Telegraph today. Middle Belt Forum, Northern leaders plotting to thwart power shift to South, says NEF, NLT, political jobbers driving agenda, warns Nigeria could break up if North holds sway. Denying Southeast presidency will be burden on Nigeria's conscience, ascribed to Anyim. So that's what you see there. Oh yeah, and then this has been going on for a while. Electoral Act override Buhari's veto. PDP governors tell NAS. A host of riders there. And still talking political, you see that one just beside that Electoral Act report. APC convention, caretaker committee to decide today to constitute zoning panel. PGFDG Lukman resigns. ascribe to sources now, sources, say governors asked him to step down. And then you see, Abia APC crisis, I belong to no faction, says Senator Kalu.
Okay, I was thinking I belong to all factions.
Okay.
Then come afterwards.
And then wait, look at this, guys. Excise duty. Customs to rake in 127 billion naira from carbonated drinks. So, it goes back to those questions as to why do you think government agencies, the regulatory bodies, are not exactly holding sway in terms of ensuring that standards and certain things happen? Because look, when you make them revenue generating agencies, when they have targets that they need to fulfill, chances are that certain standards will drop because they
need to
are
meet that
focusing
target.
on the money. They need to meet the target, and when you have to do that, you get what you see.
And you need to balance this well, because yes, we need that money. If there's anything we need right now in Nigeria, is the money, but we shouldn't compromise on the quality and those standards.
It's difficult to balance.
Well, let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper. Leads with something similar to what you see there on the front page of New Telegraph. Leadership has this one on 2023, and it says, Southeast leaders woo North, vote 10 billion naira for Igbo candidates. So you might want to get in the details, get into the paper for more details. But take a look at the writers. PDP governors silent on zoning consensus candidate. APC governors pass vote of confidence on Buni committee as PGF DG resigns. It's time to reward Tinubu, Shatima, Babachir tell PMB stakeholders.
Reward.
Yeah, reward. So we just need to understand the context of the reward, what kind of reward is being talked about.
Should be another question, don't you think?
A lot of questions, right? And there's more on the front page. Progressive women move to break political gender barriers. Way to go, right? Hold a national conference on women participation and inclusiveness rights today to present one voice ahead of poll. I recall that a woman has, or do I say another woman, has stepped into the fray of the race to the presidential election. So would we be seeing more? Would we be seeing women back one candidate? Because it would be interesting if all women in Nigeria vote for a particular candidate. I mean, that's a win for that candidate.
Kari, how is that going to happen?
That's what I'm saying.
Somebody's wife, the husband is contesting. You expect her to mobilize women against her husband?
No, it's she for she.
All women.
Even you can have he for she in that situation.
Well, we have he for she already. Yeah. But then will the he who wants to contest support
allow
the
she to vote
so
for
she
another
might end up being for he in that case.
All right. I'll just leave it there for the Leadership newspaper.
All right. Take a look at the Daily Times newspaper. Banditry won't end soon in Zamfara. That's according to the governor, Matawale. Reveals plan to name collaborators, insists 58, not 200 people killed in recent attacks. As bandits right 9 Zamfara communities say, pay us 24 million naira or face setback or face attacks. I don't even know where to begin with that one.
Wow.
Bandits are writing, and is it that we don't know where they are or how to approach them with the level of intelligence available to our security forces? I don't know.
But I know you're just thinking aloud.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, right above the nameplate, something related. State police. PDP governors accuse Buhari of unwillingness to end insecurity. Find out what that is about on the front page. Continues on page 2.
Well, I'd like to see if at all the governors, I think they're meeting on Wednesday. So if they meet, who knows? Will they broach this topic?
All right.
About state police?
I think they've talked about it at some point.
Well, they agree on that.
Well, governors seem to agree on this.
No, well, they can, if they have an agreement and a consensus, there'll be huge traction nationally.
Okay.
You know that.
But then, will that traction...
If they're all on the same page.
Will that traction go as far as the presidency?
If all of them agree?
I'm just saying, yeah. Anyway,
we've seen it before.
That's what you have on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. The riders to that one: score President low on economy, ask National Assembly to override President's veto on electoral bill. Find the details of that on the front page of the Daily Times. Continues on the inside pages. That's the Daily Times newspaper this morning.
Well, we have Daily Trust for you here in Abuja. Just before I go to Daily Trust, talking about food this morning, the pyramids here in Abuja, the rice pyramids, I think a rice festival is about to begin. Let us hope that it will certainly have, let's say, an effect on the inflation on the price of rice. At least here in the FCT, since the launch is being done here today. We'll see what happens with that. But Daily Trust, you'll see the story on the front pages for you. Fresh dust over electoral bill as National Assembly resumes today. PDP governors ask lawmakers to override Buhari, remove direct primaries, other contentious clauses. That's from CSOs. Will consider all options. That's from parliamentarians. It's a page 4 read for you. They also have that story on inflation. Inflation rises to 15.63% after 8-month decline. Pay us 24 million naira or we attack you. Terrorist rights 9 Zamfara communities. Matawali meets Buhari, says banditry won't end soon. That story is also on the front page. Look at this one on health. Cholera killed 3,604 in 33 states. FCT in 2021. That statistic is from the NCDC, so we can take it to the bank. It's a page 6 read for you, and something on politics. Shetima to Buhari, it's payback time for Tinubu. That story is also on the front page. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
We'll take a look at Vanguard newspaper next. Convention split persists as APC governors back Buni. Divisions consume PGFDG, Saliu Lukman. Buni briefs Buhari as CECPC meets today. Tinubu's men converge on Abuja, express readiness for 2023 battle. Buni's CECPC has weakened APC, says ex-SGF Babachir Lawal. Those attacking Asiwaju are afraid of his profile, Shatima. 600 women groups storm Abuja for Yaya Bello.
Okay.
Stop overheating the polity. APC's ex-deputy publicity scribe warns presidential aspirants. So there goes the women's groups and folks.
Some of the women. I mean, we still have like 40-something% more.
Yeah, as long as some are off, it becomes if wishes were horses. Yeah. Why banditry won't end soon? Governor Matawale. So you just wonder, so what? Are we not supposed to accept that and live with that? They were elected to solve this problem. So no, you should be telling us why it will end, what you will do to end it. No, why it won't end soon. If not, that's why you go become governors then, if people can't solve this challenge.
I think sometimes we, as you often say, Chamberlain, we paper over cracks. So bandits are writing communities that have local governments. I can't imagine. I mean, my head always goes back to the First Republic, where the local government was that strong. Even the Third Republic, where the local governments were so strong that they did things on their own and made things happen. So that's the first line. Yeah,
well, let me bring you back to this republic and to Cameroon, for that matter. If you look at the back page, Nigeria versus Guinea-Bissau, Iguanvoy says, we won't underrate wild dogs. So even though Salah is lamenting, wow, AFCON no longer easy, Salah groans. Times have changed. And speaking about times changing, female ref to handle Zimbabwe-Guinea match today.
Way to go.
Look out for that.
Way to go.
That's Vanguard today.
Well, take a look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. The big one is on Nnamdi Kanu. And the story says, FG files fresh 15-count charge against Kanu. It's on page 2. I think it's the edition that now makes 15, but more details on page 2 of that paper. Of course, that cholera story also makes its way to the front page. Nigeria recorded 3,604 deaths. By the way, that's in just 1 year. COVID-19 deaths in 2 years, about 3,100 now. But cholera actually took way more in a year. So clearly, we also need to pay a lot of attention to this one. You see that one? We're not letting our eyes off it. Trial of 15 suspects in Odili's home raid begins. 3 suspects granted 5 million naira bail each. Page 3 reads, there's sports on the back page. Lewandowski retains Best FIFA award. That's the Nigerian Tribune.
The Guardian newspaper has this one on its front page. Override Buhari's veto or delete direct primary, PDP governors tell National Assembly. Laments state of insecurity, pro strategies to tackling menace. CSOs urge National Assembly to retransmit bill before Friday. Ask Buhari to assent within 1 week. We will aggregate opinions from consultations with constituents, says Senate leader. That and several others for your pick this morning on the front page of The Guardian.
All right, so that ends it with a look at some of the dailies here today. Yeah, you can tell us, write us, let us know what you think about any of these matters. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.
To report or carry out our report.
399 days to the 2023 general election. Members of civil society groups are gathered here to continue their push for the speedy conclusion of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The coalition of civil society groups, led by Yaga Africa, had listed 10 key clauses that should be amended to guarantee the integrity of the election. These issues dominated the conversation at the Citizens' Town Hall, especially the clause that relates to the conduct of primaries by political parties.
Why are you saying the governors are against direct, governors are against indirect? It is totally false. The governors are just saying that provide an option. Don't box ourselves into saying only one option. In case something comes up that option is not possible, are we going to go back to the constitution, or are we going to have some constitutional issues? So that's it.
This country will be better off if we go into the next election with a new electoral law which would enhance the integrity of the preparations and conduct of elections.
Some of the panelists joined the session virtually. Prominent among them are the spokespersons of the Senate and the House of Representatives. However, the conversation took a different turn when the lawmakers were asked about the errors and contradictions highlighted by civil society organizations in the rejected Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
Unfortunately, there won't be much time. There won't be much time to go through all the 17 errors at this sitting. What we are concerned with...
Which version are you using? Is it the version of Yaga or the version that is with the National Assembly?
Senator...
So there must be a reference copy.
Senator...
You cannot come on national television and undermine the decision of National Assembly without fact and figure. So I challenge you, which copy are you using? Is it copy or is it 5 copy of an NGO? Or the copy with the National Assembly,
the same copy that was made public. It's become a public document now, and we've been able to scrutinize it.
It's not public document.
It's a public fact against you, Senator. You may disagree with it.
Who issued it to be the public document?
Senator,
it's a serious matter that I have to take it up.
I must commend the civil society organization who
have been making efforts to make sure that we see things from their own direction. On the 29th of December, I received a letter from Yaga with regards to some of the errors. We're talking about clause 24 sub 4, clause 50 sub 2, clause 64 7 and 8, sub 7 and 8, clause 91 sub 2, clause 107 sub 3, clause 137 sub 3, and subheads, paragraphs 4, 5, 6, paragraph 10 sub 2, paragraph 14 2, paragraph 16 3, and all the rest of them. We are partners in this Nigerian project. So what we have done, immediately I send it to the speaker to look at.
The conversation is holding a few days to the resumption of legislative sitting for the year. Civil society groups are hoping that federal lawmakers can address the concerns raised by the president in the bill ahead of the off-season elections in the FCT, Osun, and Ekiti states.
Because
Well, if there's one theme you can take away from all of the papers today, it is that they're already beginning to set an agenda for parliamentarians who will resume from their holiday recess today. You look at the front page of The Guardian, for instance, Electoral Act override Buhari's veto or delete direct primary, PDP governors tell National Assembly. So that's sitting right at the top of the front burner, if there's any such position, just to press home the importance of all of this. Now, joining us this morning to see how that agenda is going to be approached or how that's going to be pushed in the House, if at all it is a part of the agenda today, is Honorable Sergius Ogun, who is a member, Constitution Review Committee. You're welcome to Sunrise Early this morning, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you for having me.
And we also have with us Mr. Eze Onyekwere, who is a legal practitioner and also a fiscal governance contributor. Mr. Onyekwere, if you can hear us, good morning and welcome to the program. Okay, well, I guess they will work on the audio as we move along in the program, but I'm sure you can see Mr. Onyekwere there. He's almost all set, just needs to fix the audio. But Honourable, you have seen a lot of talk around the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. We saw that letter just before the National Assembly went on recess for the holidays. It was not received very well, it would seem, by members of the National Assembly. Is that correct?
Yes, but it depends on who you are talking to in the National Assembly. Some members felt it was okay what the president said, and they were in agreement with the president. I was in agreement with the president because long before then I had said, this route we are taking is too expensive. We need to we should have allowed the bill to go to the president the way it came to the House, before the clause-by-clause consideration where it was amended, the particular clause was amended. So it depends on who you are talking to in the National Assembly. But I heard there was a lot of noise in the Senate and all that. And I also said then that, look, it's just noise. They're talking about having 73 members, senators, or 80-something at a point. I said it wasn't going to happen.
Interestingly, I mean, because if anyone were to look at it, yeah. I'm trying to see your party now. I imagine you're a member of APC or PDP? PDP, exactly. So I just wanted to be double sure, and I know that you haven't crossed the aisle in that regard. So if that is the situation, because a lot of the complaints we heard in the Senate came from PDP senators who felt, I don't know what to say, they felt slighted by the president's refusal to give assent to the bill. But it seems that there has been no consensus, so to speak. This was canvassed mostly, I don't want to say by APC lawmakers, this direct primaries, but it looks like within the PDP, within the ranks of the PDP, this wasn't taken kindly to.
Yes, you just used the word, they felt slighted, that look, this is a bill put together by the parliament and they engaged with the executive, and yet a thing like this will happen. And he could have returned it earlier, you know, but I also think the leadership of the National Assembly or the National Assembly are in cohort with the president in this. Why did you have to wait till the day we were going on vacation to bring it? And they meet, the leadership of the National Assembly meets with the president all the time. Was it that he didn't raise this? Was it that they were not aware? You know, but
yeah, but we saw them trying to. It seemed they were trying to campaign. We saw a lot of visits to the president in that period over this particular clause. At least that's what a lot of people thought it was about. I mean, the National Assembly leadership, the governors as well, also saying no, this cannot stand. There was a line of some sort drawn, and I was wondering on whose side will the president, whose side will the president be on?
But it's been said that there's a romance between the parliament and the executive right now. So in the spirit of that romance or relationship, I would have thought the president would have whispered to the leadership to say, look, I will not append my signature to this. Maybe you should go back and do X, Y, Z. You know, but like I said, I think they were in the know. They knew what was coming. But in any case, like I said, I agree with the president in principle because I advocated those same positions. And I think we need leadership in this country. Because like I've heard people say, a leader is one that will plant a tree, even knowing that he will not eat from the fruit or she will not eat from the fruit or enjoy the benefit of the canopy that that tree will provide. We'll still go ahead and plant it. That is what we need in this country today. But what I have discovered that everybody wants it to happen now in their time for their own benefit. You don't build a nation like that. I am not against direct primaries. If anything, someone like me should advocate for direct primaries because I don't build structures in my constituency. People are paying delegates for the next election right now, next primaries. I don't believe in such things. So you can actually categorize people like us as paperweight politicians because we are not dealing with the so-called leadership there. We are dealing directly with the people. Take the dividends of democracy to the people.
So direct primaries would have favored you?
Exactly, but it's not about me. That's what I've always said. It's not about me. I have said severally, for direct primaries, I'll probably be in Abuja here while it's going on in my constituency. Yes, because it's the people, I work for the people, the young people, I work with the young people in my constituency. But when the political parties have the direct primaries, the indirect and consensus in their constitution. And like the president said, I have also advocated that leave this to the political parties. You know, but I even think the president didn't need to add consensus because he came in 2014, if you will remember, through indirect. That happened in Lagos, he contested against Kwankwanso and Atiku. And then 2018, it was now direct. So if you had tied everybody into direct, that window would not have been there. The consensus, he was a consensus candidate of the APC in 2018. The direct was just a formality to bring it to pass, just like my governor in Edo State was a consensus candidate during the primaries. But that was indirect, you know. So when everybody agrees that this individual should go through, it becomes consensus. So whichever mode you adopt is just to go through the process, becomes, a conventional thing. So that's the point I'm making. Don't lock us in just because of some pecuniary reasons.
So while direct primaries and indirect primaries, the debate continues, I mean, the merit and demerit of it, we have a whole Electoral Act. The Electoral Act is more than direct and indirect primaries. Yeah. And there are questions as to what the advantages of the Electoral Act, there are fears that they might not be able to, not just the advantages, the innovations that have been brought to bear in the new Electoral Act amendment bill, that there are fears that they will not see sufficient grounds to be able to test run them before we go into the general elections in 2023. And so there is some urgency that this be considered. As the House resumes today, do you think, I mean, I don't know if you're aware, is this going to be part of the agenda which will be discussed today or perhaps during the week?
I don't think so, because our weekly order paper is out. I have seen it. It wasn't listed. So I wasn't expecting it to be there. Yes, because I believe, I don't know, it takes a while to do things like this. But I don't think people are apprehensive because they think the APC is running away from electronic transmission of results. But that is not the issue. Even the 2015, the Electoral Act that was amended in 2015, signed by Jonathan, already gives INEC, in that same Section 52 sub 2, the powers to decide on the mode of election. You know, is there. So I think people are scared that, oh, well, if they don't do this now, because they are scared of transfer of results, transmission of results, that's what they are avoiding. INEC already has powers to do that, and they are doing it. The Osun election 2018, they did it. You know, I guess the government at the top here, or the center, they wanted it because they were not sure they were going to win the election, and then they leaned heavily on them. And I also think, look, in a constitutional democracy, you cannot afford to not to have the rule of law. The way we are going in this country with the courts is very dangerous. I think the courts are kind of overreaching because the INEC has power to do what they are doing today. Even the election in Edo, the one in Anambra, they transmitted the result. So has anybody gone to court to invalidate those results, the elections? No. They have powers to do that, and it's in the Electoral Act as amended. So I don't think we should fret about it. If the president decides to return it and they go around doing whatever they want to do so that they will not assent to it, INEC knows that they have powers to decide on whichever mode of whether to transmit electronically or not, and they're already doing it. So no cause for alarm.
Okay, let me quickly bring in Mr. Onyekpere into this conversation, and then we will go to Lagos. Mr. Onyekpere, should I say Happy New Year to you? We've spoken this year already. I think the last conversation we had was over the budget. Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Thank you, and good morning, viewers.
Good morning. I do not know what you make of these. We've been seeing a lot of push on the National Assembly to prioritize the Electoral Act Amendment Bill and handle the business of that legislation as quickly as possible. Do you think that the sense of urgency which we are placing on the National Assembly, is it misplaced?
It is not misplaced. We are talking about the 2023 elections and the need for certainty in the law towards the preparation for that election. So the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is electoral empire, need to be sure of the exact laws and policies that will undergird their preparation for the general elections. And if you recall, this is not the first time an attempt has been made to amend the Electoral Act since the Buhari administration. And at 3 or 4 instances, there were all kinds of specious reasons given by the president for not assenting to the amendments. So this builds on some form of history why Nigerians are apprehensive that we could continue this back and forth until another reason comes forward, oh, it's too late, it will cause a lot of dislocation in the system. It happened the last time. So that's why Nigerians are saying, please, at the earliest opportunity, amend this law, let it be certain, let INEC and the political parties start working, because it is not a long time away. 1 year is not too far a time for you to prepare for the amendment for the elections coming up early next year. And also, you have this scenario, okay, that everybody is interested in the outcome of the election due to the fact that the country has not been properly managed. So that apprehension, that idea that we want to know what exactly is happening, because even some of the reasons given by Mr. President for not assenting to the law may not be so valid, if you ask me. If you look at the debate about direct and indirect primaries, we've been having a lot of these indirect primaries, delegate system where people are bought off. I personally would have loved the situation where, like the honorable member said, you go back to your constituents and have a feel of how exactly they feel, particularly those from your party, whether you are still popular enough to be able to be made the candidate or flag bearer of your party. Because it is so funny that a political party can come out to tell us that they don't even have a credible members register. How can a political party be hard to say that? And you don't need to say you have one day like they do to conduct primaries, mobilize all kinds of people like you have an INEC election. These things, if you have a credible party register, you can even run your voting over a period of a week or two. And simply all that people need to go to is go to their respective wards. Some even can vote electronically. So I think that was an opportunity for the political parties to refine their systems, produce proper, credible members register, run the system in such a way to test the waters to know whether this is possible and feasible. And I know that it is possible if the political will is there, because the idea that a governor or somebody sits down and says he controls the lineups of the party, determines who goes to the Senate, determines who goes to the House of Reps, determining who becomes an honorable member at the state level, determining the local government chairman across the local governments in the state, determining the ward councillors. I mean, it's extremely ridiculous. We can't continue to run a system like that and pretend we are running a democracy. So I would have very much well voted for direct, just calling the people, members of the party, to vote. And moreover, why did the president wait for so long? And like the honorable member did say, the president has a very healthy relationship with the leadership of the National Assembly. Why did he wait? All through the time the bill was being considered, there was no executive opinion. And even when the bill was forwarded to him first, one had expected him to have some discussions and not wait until the last day. So that's what is fueling the apprehension that there is an agenda from the presidency and maybe from the APC not known to Nigerians. And that is the unfortunate scenario why Nigerians are a little bit apprehensive and want it done today and tomorrow. Why should it not be on the agenda for the first week? What the hell will the National Assembly be discussing? So everybody expects them, if they miss it this first week, in the second week, they must prioritize it, resolve it one way or the other, so that we put a closure to the issue of the amendment of the electoral bill, electoral law.
Curious, really, Mr. Oyekbere, because it was on this note, sort of, that the National Assembly, especially the House of Reps, I mean, we have the Honorable, who's a member of the House of Reps, that they went on recess. And I recall the Speaker saying that, you know what, they need to speak with their constituents, they don't want to throw away the baby with the bathwater, and also it was on this note that they went on recess. So it's natural that they resume on the note, like pick it up where they left off. And looking at the calendar now, we're exactly 13 months away from Saturday, February the 18th, 2023, which is the proposed date for that election. You have an understanding of the processes in the National Assembly. So if you could shed more light, how difficult or how easy is it to tidy up that bill, send it back to the president for his assent? How long should it take? Because I recall the minority leader last year saying that we can actually still do it today. So is it something that can actually be done in a day, transmitted to the president and sorted out?
If there is a political will and they have listed it in the first week of resumption, I believe that maximally 3, 4, 5 days of work in the National Assembly, they have a clean copy. They have even been assisted by some civil society organizations who pointed out sections that were inelegantly drafted or had some challenges. So all they needed to do was to sit down with their lawyers and their draftsmen, review what the civil society people have already brought to them, and see whether it fits into the scheme of things, and then come to the floor of the House or the Senate and take a decision. It shouldn't be more than 30, 40 minutes business with the hammer. Those in support say this one, say I, and then you move on and get a clean copy. So it shouldn't take more than 1 week of work if they are serious, and that's the expectation of Nigerians.
Let me just quickly ask our Honorable Sir, just picking up on what Mr. Oyekbere just spoke about in terms of the impression from what they've seen as to whether or not there's a real intention to pass this bill. Because we do remember that the Speaker at the time, when he visited the President, did say, well, the President likes this. Yes, he supports the right primaries. He wants this to be done, only for this to happen. And then you're resuming, and we're not sure if it's going to be one of the key items that will be discussed and addressed immediately the Assembly resumes. What kind of fillers do you get from your colleagues there? Why isn't it as though the National Assembly wants to run with this and address it as soon as possible?
Well, we want to do this like yesterday because, this is more like an election year. Yeah, because very soon everybody will be going home for primaries and you want to know the mode of primaries. But like I said, I think the leadership of the National Assembly know what is going on. And I believe they engaged the president before then. Like you rightly mentioned, the speaker had met with the president, and within the villa, they said the president was going to assent, and yet the president did not. And like my brother said, Dr. Yokore, that we should quickly attend to this. And I think this is very easy and straightforward. What was recommended to the House before the amendment was direct and indirect primaries. Now the president says if you do that, if you return that indirect to the bill and you send it back to me, I will sign. And that shouldn't take more than 1 hour to do. So unless there are extraneous things that we want to reintroduce into the bill. So I think there is commitment on the side of members, at least of the House of Rep, to do something about this like yesterday. It's not been listed this week, but that's not to say it cannot be listed today, because usually, you have the weekly order paper in view, but when you get in there, they can bring supplementary. So I can't close that door that it should not be considered this week.
Just to be clear, one, we can have a supplementary, some addition to the order paper such that it will come up. And you said that it shouldn't take more than 1 hour. So if it comes up today, it can be sorted today and then eventually transmitted to the president. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yep.
So I wonder what's the thinking then within the PDP. As I said, the minority leader last year said, we can actually consider this today, as at the time that the House of Reps wanted to go on recess, and then send this to the president. So for the opposition PDP, I mean, we know the position of the governors regarding this. What do you have any push you're planning to bring to bear to ensure that this is probably added today, because you have powers in the National Assembly? Are you planning to do that and say, you know what, as a matter of urgency, this needs to be discussed?
Well, in the House of Representatives, you have 360 members that are led by 10 people in the leadership. And this leadership meets, I think, once in a week, and then also have meetings with the speaker every morning from Tuesday to Thursday when we meet. So as we speak now, I don't know if they have taken a position for the supplementary order paper or for it to be listed within the week. But I strongly believe in the House, I will not speak for the Senate, that we want to do this business like yesterday and put it behind us. So maybe as we resume today, we'll probably be able to reach out to one another and then see what we can do about it. But I cannot speculate right now.
Okay, we'll let you give us, shed a little more light when we return in just a moment. Don't go away. Honorable Sergius, could you shed some light on this matter for us, if you will? Because, I mean, we thought that some of your members had said if you have to debate such matters, they have to have copies of it 24 hours or thereabout before the time. And now, if they don't have copies already, how is it that it can be done today and assented to and debated today and passed, perhaps waiting for the Senate?
Well, we have copies of the bill. Unless you're talking about the letter from the president, that's basically talking about that we should return the indirect primaries to the bill. Mm-hmm. So I think we are ready, because we went through that bill, then debated it on the floor during the second reading. Members participated in the public hearing, and then it was brought for clause-by-clause consideration. So I think members pretty well know what is in the bill. So we don't need to start reading it all over again.
Okay,
the only contentious issue here is just
Yeah, I was wondering, so is there any reason, is there any explanation to any of your members? Have you heard any reason why it's not on the order paper for the week?
Like I told you, we have leadership, 10 men, 10 wise men. They lead the House. They lead the 350 of us. So they will be in a better position to know why it's not listed. But like I said, again, it can be listed today. You can have a supplementary other paper where it will come out. But I won't speculate on that now. It's still likely that this will come out this week and it will be handled this week. But if not that, it might also be that they have something to tell us, and we'll probably know about that later today.
Let me ask Mr. Onyekwere, what for you are the implications of the information that Honorable Ogun has just given us? The fact that it's not been listed and may or may not be listed today or this week?
Basically, it talks about the prioritization and how important the leadership of the House thinks that this matter is. Like everybody's been pointing out, in my own experience, I thought it could take them up to 1 week, maybe, for all those issues of mistakes and not proper referencing, that they need to go back and have the experts look at this thing for a couple of days again. But the way he spoke, it's like it's something that will be concluded in an hour or two, or at maximum a day, which is even a very good thing since we can do it more expeditiously. So the important thing is that it's not a question of what the leadership of the House is thinking in terms of their own priority. They have to read the lips of Nigerians. They have to understand how important Nigerians think this particular law is. So, and that will now give them a sense of prioritization. If they were not happy when they were going for Christmas and New Year break because of the way the president handled the matter, it behoves on them to start with it as a very first thing, resolve it before they can move on to other things. So I don't want to speculate to say whether anybody has any agenda, whether hidden or unhidden, but it is a little bit difficult to understand why it should not be there in the first place on the first day and in the first week of resumption.
Given the work that civil society organizations have done, the consultations with the arms, with the both chambers of the National Assembly, do you think the CSOs the civil society community might be a little disappointed so far in the process, given the gaps that have been noted that's caused this delay in the first place?
Very well. Not just members of the civil society. The average Nigerian is disappointed with the process so far. And if you look at these issues of the gaps and maybe inelegant drafting or the referencing that was not properly done, this is not the first law that we have seen such a scenario. Indeed, if you go to the Fiscal Responsibility Act, there was a reference in the law that's already signed by the president to an unexisting provision in that law. So you discover that these are the kind of things that shows that maybe those at the back end who should clean up these laws and do the last minute reading have not been doing their duties properly. So the expectation now is that this is a real matter of urgent national importance, not just those things they stand up in the House and declare something a matter of urgent national importance. This one is urgent. At least they've had Nigerians, what Nigerians said during the time the bill was considered, up till the time the president declined assent. Of course, up to yesterday, the town hall meeting that was organized. So they know the expectations. So for anybody to pretend to say this is not an urgent matter, I don't know where exactly the person is living. If you have constituents, I'm sure they must have inundated you with their complaints about the bill, whether it was passed or not, during Christmas and New Year. So the expectation is that they should make it a priority. And civil society, to a great extent, and Nigerians are disappointed at what has happened so far.
Now, one other issue, Mr. Onyekwere, that has dogged our national life is that of trust in government. And government here is talking about just about anything government, including the National Assembly, which is, according to the Constitution, the #1 arm of government. Do you see this action or inaction, so to speak, this step, this information available to us, that the Electoral Act Amendment Bill has not been listed for the week? Do you see it as in any way making worse the trust quotient between government and the people?
Yes, there is a very huge trust deficit, particularly if you recall that the National Assembly, the legislature, is the first arm of government. If there's a military coup today, there'll still be an executive, the judiciary will be there, although they may blow muted trumpets, but the legislature will be the main victim that will be dissolved. Now, the expectation is that they will be on the side of the people at all times. Recall that since the last elections in 2019, we are discussing roughly about 1 year to the elections. Why has the National Assembly not come up with an amendment earlier than they did late last year? The expectation was that the Electoral Act should have been reformed not more than 1 year after the elections. Considering all the observations from INEC, security agencies, election reporters, both national and international, you build on that groundswell, even the petitions that came out from the decisions of the court, and gather all these things together, especially with that momentum when the thing was hot, and just had an amendment of that law, president signs off, and then preparation. Why always wait until the last minute? We are now talking about just 1 year to the elections, and we are still going back and forth. This thing should have been done like within the first 1 year, or at most 1.5 years after the 2019 election. So that trust deficit of saying, what exactly are these guys considering as priorities beyond what Nigerians consider as their own priorities? So it is not good enough on both the side of the National Assembly as well as the president.
Well, I think it's only fair to allow Honorable Ogun to respond to that question about, why wait? You said that this is meant to be done a year after the election. It's about 2-3 years after that election. So, Honorable Ogun, regarding the process leading up to this point, Mr. Oyepere would have wanted it to be way faster, and it looks like it's even dragging into another election. So, why did it take this long for a bill which some have called one of the most important bills in the life of a nation?
Well, I am also surprised that that happened, because this bill was ready for a very long time before it came to the floor of the House for clause-by-clause consideration. If you remember last year, at a point, people were wondering why was the bill not presented for clause-by-clause consideration. And even after that happened, before it was presented, some of us in the House queried why it was not being presented presented to the Committee of the Whole. Because we checked with some members of the committee, and they told us that, look, they have done all they needed to do. So it was delayed for a while. So that is why when people begin to talk about maybe there is a plan to deliberately delay giving assent to this bill, I tend to want to believe that. Because they had gone through public hearing and were trying to clean up the document to present for clause-by-clause consideration. And it took such a long time. I dare say it even took more than 6 months. So like I said, some of us queried or were wondering why the delay. And now, like you are saying, we have done the needful and the president has withheld his accent. It will not take so long. It shouldn't take so long for us to look at it again and then do whatever the president says we should do. It's not because the president is dictating to us, like some will say. Some of us are in agreement with some of the things the president raised. And that should not cause any harm to this bill, if you ask me. If we take such consideration, if we consider such recommendations or suggestions by the president. So it's something we need to do like yesterday and let it be accented to, because the election is around the corner, really.
Well, perhaps by way of giving us an inkling into the workings of the House of Representatives, you said earlier that it can still be listed. I'm just wondering if you could tell us the process of drawing up the list of what members of the House of Representatives have to deliberate on. Whose job is it to put this item on the agenda?
It's the chairman, rules and business, who manages that, but with the instruction of the leadership, largely the presiding officers, the speaker, really. But like I said, the leadership of the House meets every Monday, and I'm sure that would have been discussed yesterday, what should come on the other paper this week. But again, it can still be listed today. It can be listed tomorrow or even Thursday. That shouldn't be a problem.
Well, one of the things that we have been made to understand is that certain bills are sponsored by certain individuals. And so I'm just wondering, the reason I'm asking that question is, whose job or who is supposed to sponsor this particular bill into that list. For instance, we'll say Honorable Sergio Sogun is coming up with a bill on forestry in Nigeria. It's then you take it to this individual that you talked about. So whose job is it to make this recommendation that this particular one should be put on the list, given that it was a hot topic just before the House went on recess?
Well, we are not sponsoring a new bill. It's a bill that has gone through the House. So it's just to return it to the other people so that it will be considered. And that's the responsibility of the Speaker of the House. So like I said, it's too early to speculate. It might not be, it's just is it giving you a preview of what's going to happen in the week. That's the other people that we have right now. Anything can still change there. Even as we talk right now, if the Speaker takes his phone and calls the chairman rules and business, or it depends on what they discussed in the leadership meeting yesterday, it can still get into the other paper. But again, we don't know. It's possible there are some consultations they need to do. Don't forget we are resuming today. Yes, granted that they could have been talking while we were on recess, but we are really resuming today. It's possible we're going to have an executive session today where we are going to deliberate on some of these things, and it will be listed same day, same today, or maybe tomorrow. So I don't think we should dissipate too much energy on that. I know as a nation we are anxious to do this like yesterday, because like they say, once bitten, twice shy. This happened in the last House, and the same pattern is playing out right now. But I believe strongly that the president is going to assent to this bill.
Honorable Sergers, if you even just go back a little bit, the 8th Assembly went back and forth on this same matter. And I think the president signed it for about 3-4 times, eventually saying, well, it was close to the elections, so it was going to upset a lot of things. And then after the elections, Nigerians thought as soon as the National Assembly resumes, they'll pick it up. But that didn't happen until now. Look at where we are. Even before now, after the National Assembly had rejected certain provisions, citing the famous no network, then they came back, inserted these direct or indirect primaries, and people thought, what suddenly changed? They suddenly have network in their areas. And so you're saying it is a fair assessment for people to think, look, going down history and seeing, even in the immediate history, from what we've seen, they don't think that this National Assembly or even the president will assent to this. So it appears as though they all seem to be in this quote-unquote scenario together, just keep whetting our appetite, and at the end of the day, we may not even pass this.
Well, I think the government in power today are afraid of a free and fair elections. That's just simply the reason why in the last House they did not pass it, because people say, well, the National Assembly played into the hands of the president by reordering the order of elections. When the president sent it back, they removed that. I remember that clearly. That was removed, and listed the way they wanted it, and then was sent back. And they claimed there were typos, and that they cannot do anything about those typos, typographical errors. And then that was taken care of. And then went back to the president. And they did not claim that it was too close to the elections. Like somebody said, there's even a judgment in ECOWAS court or somewhere that is stated that the bill can still be passed 2 weeks to an election if all stakeholders agree. So I think they just excuses upon excuses because they are scared that if you have a free and fair election, they will not be able to manipulate it. But that shouldn't be a problem. Like I said, even in this present act that was amended in 2015, INEC can still determine the mode of transmission of results. That power is there, and they are doing it already. They did it in 2018, they did it 2020, and they did it even 2021. So I'm sure there are other things in the bill, not just the transmission of a result. There are other things in the bill that should help our electoral system. But let's not be in a hurry about this. I am sure we will do the needful, and the president will assent to this. But I also urge everyone to speak up. I mean, this is a country. Nation building is a joint task.
The president has spoken about this, has spoken up, as it were, in that interview with Channels Television, saying he will sign it if that issue is resolved. So the president has spoken up. The people have spoken up to a large extent. The CSOs, we've heard from there, even people, individuals. So essentially, we're waiting for the National Assembly to speak up on this one, Honorable Ogun. But let me take a point you made to Mr. Onyekpere, because you said that even with the current Electoral Act, which was amended, the 2010, which was amended in 2015, INEC can still, find a way around the electronic, is it transmission or electronic, collation of results. And I'd like to know, Mr. Onyekpere, do you agree with that? Can INEC still? Yes, the bill has other provisions, but regarding this electronic transmission, can INEC still do that with the current law that we have?
Very well. At least it's been cited how what INEC did in Anambra, what they did in Edo, and what they did in Osun elections. There is a precedent. And if you look at the constitutional powers of INEC, they are quite broad in terms of determining how to do a free and fair election, even without amending the law as we have it today. Once there's that political will among the stakeholders that are running the elections, they can as well go ahead and effect these changes that need to be done. So I don't even want to bank on an amendment of the law as it is today for INEC to do the needful, because they've already started taking those steps. All they need to do is for the political parties and civil society to encourage them so that they can comprehensively review within the powers, the constitutional powers they have, a few other gray areas which they need to make sure, drawing on the lessons of previous elections, to make sure they plug all those loopholes that have emerged, to make sure that what we are going to have in 2023 is an election that builds on the previous performance. It should be better than what we had in the past. And back to what has been said about the president's continuous refusal to sign the Electoral Act that we have bills that were sent to him. You could see a pattern emerging. Even though the president has given his word that, okay, if you amend this, he will sign. There's nothing that says that if you take it back to him, he will still seek the advice of the Attorney General and other stakeholders who could as well come up with one thing or the other at any given point in time. And the question will be, the argument will be, if we find that there's a mistake or there's an error, we will simply let it go on simply because we did not see it the last time to raise it up. So I think that the duty of the National Assembly is to move as expeditiously as possible, send this bill back to the president so that everybody will now clearly see that the ball is now in the table of the president. If he comes up with any other thing that no one can appreciate, then it should be clear that he's not interested in reforms. Because the popular impression out there on the street is that Mr. President is not interested in a reformed electoral law, because it appears the ruling political party, just like any other ruling political party at previous times in our history, are never interested in reforms, because the gaming of the system, the manipulation of the system, or opportunities to read are much more in the hands of whoever is controlling the levers of power at that time than for the opposition. So it is up to everybody to move them, nudge them gradually to a position where their intention will be clearly seen, so that nobody will have the opportunity, a subterfuge to hide to say, oh, A or B happened like it's been the last time. But it will be clear that if all the hurdles you placed on the path of reforming the law are cleared, and then you still come up with another specious excuse or reason, then Nigerians can now decide what next steps, how they can now approach the government of the people.
Well, Mr. Onyekpere, while we're at that, there's a lot of talk about the law, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which will become Electoral Act 2021 or 2022. But then there is also the thorny question of the people who will execute that law. And that is also another issue that is gaping. That's the issue around INEC national commissioners. What do you make of all of the conversations going on around the president's list? Some are saying review the list, include this person, remove this person, and all of those things. What do you make of that, and how important do you see that in the scheme of things?
Every law or policy has to be implemented by human beings. The character, quality, the moral upbringing and knowledge and capacity of whoever is going to implement a law will go a long way in determining the quality of implementation. So I think that this is where the role of the legislature is called into play. The president can nominate whoever he likes based on his political leaning or his knowledge of the world affairs. It is the duty of the legislature to now find out if this is a round peg in a round hole or a square peg in a square hole. And where such persons are seen as not being fit and proper persons, or people with political dispositions, or people who, due to one reason or the other, cannot perform optimally in the office, it is for the legislature to refuse to say, well, if this person comes for screening, no, we are not going to approve him or her because he's not fit and proper for that particular position, or based on his background, we don't believe he can deliver. But the challenge is that we still have a National Assembly and the presidency that are having some form of what I would call, before this particular issue came up, an incestuous relationship. So if they do their homework very well, I don't see that being an issue. Some people may be dropped, and the president may be compelled to keep nominating people until they meet the criteria as determined by the elected representatives of the people, who should now reflect what the people actually want for the democracy to thrive.
Quickly, Mr. Ekwere, in 30 seconds, do you have questions about any of the people that's been nominated?
Well, it's not for me to begin to discuss persons individually. We have security agencies who should do background work. We have the National Assembly, which should have its own way of reaching out. So I think they are better positioned to look at these issues. To be honest, I've not gone through the list to just take a critical look at the person, but it is the duty of the National Assembly to screen and then make the right recommendations.
All right. Honorable Ogun, given the noise that's been going on about this, what are the things that you are looking at as an individual, and what are people to expect from the National Assembly?
Well, I expect, as an individual, I expect that the bill will be represented, and then we would just return it the way it was, allow for the direct...
Just a second, Honorable, I'm talking about the issue of the INEC National Commissioners. Given the noise that's going on about that one, yeah, what do you make of do you think there is any value in the conversations going on before the National Assembly even takes a look?
Of course. What Dr. Ekwere said, put it rightly. If the security agents will do their bits, because usually you send their details to the DSS for screening. If they would do their work, do the background check on these individuals before sending it to the Senate, and the Senate will do their work and not just tell anybody to take a bow and go, we should be able to expose anyone that has political leaning to the government in power today, or people that are not competent, and then make the right decisions. So yeah, it's a good thing that we are talking about it, and it's also good that. But look at the case of Loretta Onoche. People spoke up, and by the time she got to the Senate, the senators were ready. So that's what I expect us to do always. Don't just leave it to the National Assembly members. We are all stakeholders in this country. The media, the average Nigerian should speak up when you know something. They say if you see something, say something. If you know something, speak up, say something. So if you pass this information across to the National Assembly members, and it's up there, in the country, people will be careful in what they are allowed to go through. So it's not enough to say that they will appear before the senators, and the senators will do the needful. Yes, they should do it. Even the security agents might not know everything about them, because you're talking about background check. They might not have access to every information, but when people talk about it, when people speak up about it, you put the senators in check. So when it comes to them, when it's presented before the senators, they will do the needful. So I think it's a good thing that we are talking about it.
All right, Honorable. So in conclusion, you think that in spite of all of this going back and forth as to amending the Electoral Act or not, if you cite Section 52, INEC can determine the mode of transmission of election results, meaning you think that, yes, they can still handle all of this and it will not be discretionary?
Yes, they can. They have the powers to do that. In the Electoral Act that was amended in 2015. They can't do it. And they did it before. They did it in Osun. Nothing happened. Now they are still doing it now. They did that in Edo, in Ondo, I think they did that in Edo, 2020, and in Anambra. Nobody has gone to court. You know, but like I said earlier, I think the courts tend to overreach. So they have the powers to do it as stated in the Electoral Act. So they should go ahead. If the president decides not to assent to this, they have the powers to do it.
Okay, let me just quickly bring this as an aside, and this has nothing to do with the Electoral Act. You're also a member of the Constitution Review Committee. ₦1 billion has been passed in the 2022 budget for Constitution Review. Where are we with that, and what is that money going to be used for?
Well, I think it was there was no money budgeted for it in 2021 budget. No money was budgeted for it. So I think they decided to budget something for it in this budget. But that's a good question to ask. Nigerians are not talking about the Constitutional Review Committee right now. Why are we not working? We are not working. When we were going to go on the long recess in June, we were told that we were going to stay back and work. And some of us cancelled whatever plans we had for the long recess. And then a little later, I was called off. You know, from then till now, we have not met. So why are Nigerians not talking about it? I know we are just...
Why have you not met?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Have you asked questions amongst members and even maybe the Senate as well?
Well, some of us have discussed it, but you see, the way things work, we came back and they started talking about the budget. Now we are done with the budget. We went on Christmas recess. Now we are talking about Electoral Act. By the time you finish this, you might be looking at going into February, March. Because the Constitutional Review Committee will still finish their work, send it to the states. The states will make their own decisions, send it back, and then before we go to the president.
You don't think that much will be done before?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I've given up hope that anything will happen. Just because I believe there was external influence. Because the chairman of the ad hoc committee had told us clearly, the deputy speaker, that we are going to work on this during the recess. Some people grumble they're going to travel, and others say, okay, fine, we will stay back and do it. And just then we got a text that, look, well, we cannot work. You know, so we should ask why we are not working on that today. But Nigerians, we don't do that, you know.
Well, we'll certainly, you know, keep tabs with you and find out whether there's been any progress reports, because ₦1 billion certainly has been budgeted for it in this and it's been passed. So we know that is law now. But looking at what you're saying, it doesn't look like much will come out of it. But let us wait and see, not speculate on that. Let's thank you very much this morning for coming on Sunrise Daily. Honorable Sedjus Ogun is a member of the Constitutional Review Committee, and you just got an update on that one. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. We've also been speaking with Mr. Eze Onyekbere, who is a legal practitioner and a fiscal governance contributor. Mr. Onyekbere, thank you once again for joining us all the way from Birnin Kebbi via Zoom.
Thank you, my pleasure.
We'll take a break at this point and be back with another topic very closely related, but with another angle and perspective. In just a moment, please stay with us. Well, Majid Dahiru joins us now. He's a newspaper columnist, and we're going to be talking about what sort of officers are needed to man the post. While we have the Electoral Act, the debate on that one is still on, not debate now, but the fate of that one is yet to be finally decided, either by the president or by the members of the National Assembly. There needs to be a conversation around the operators of the Electoral Act. The people who will be operating it are mostly in INEC. Yes, there's a role for everybody, but they are the ones, the drivers of the Electoral Act. And we understand that about 5 positions recently became vacant, or about to become vacant in INEC, in the position of national commissioners, and even some RECs, some state resident electoral commissioners as well. And there's now conversation around the sorts of people that need to fill the spaces, especially in the light of what we've seen before, where clearly known partisan members were fielded by the party, by the APC, or let's say the president, as the case is. And to join us to discuss this issue as to whether or not he has any apprehensions, I think I already introduced him, is Majid Dahiru. I do not know. First, a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, my sister.
The year has started with a big bang.
Honestly.
And the politicians are already...
All suspense suspended.
They've gotten right into it and they're jumping into the waters of politics.
They can't do it.
And dragging all of us along with them.
Yes, well, it's interesting. It's going to be a very exciting year.
Very exciting year. Well, we hope that while we pay attention to our democracy, I also hope that we also pay attention to the everyday things that affect people, electricity, water, etc. But this is where we are right now. I do not know if you've given thought to this issue of those who will operate the Electoral Act, which, well, we're still trying to decide what will become of that. In the next couple of weeks, we should know what will be the fate of that. But are you apprehensive in terms of those who will be operating this Electoral Act?
I am. I'm one of those who believe that the operators of the law are actually even more important than the law. And so I'm very apprehensive because we've practiced democracy since 1999, and so by this year we'll be 22 years old as a democracy. And people are beginning to lose faith in democracy in Nigeria and most of sub-Saharan African countries. And the reason is because democracy has not yielded the much anticipated dividends in terms of improved security and welfare for citizens. And so people are beginning to question the very relevance of democracy. But I believe that democracy still remains the best form of government, and that the problem of Nigeria is not democracy, but Nigeria is actually the problem of democracy. And so to correct the problem we're having of democracy in Nigeria is to apply more democracy. I believe we've not practiced democracy in the true sense of the definition of democracy in Nigeria since 1999. We've made improvements somewhat, sometimes we've seen reversals of some of those improvements as well. And so if democracy is to yield fruit, it has to come with a credible electoral process. You see, a credible election is the soul of a democracy, without which a democracy is dead, is infertile, it is sterile, and cannot yield any form of dividend in terms of improved welfare and security. And so it is important that if democracy must continue to remain relevant in our lives as a people, everything must be done to improve the electoral process that truly, truly empowers the Nigerian people to elect or reject their political leadership at all levels and all tiers of government in line with their performance. Election cycle should be a reward or punishment for good governance or otherwise. When Nigerians are fully empowered by a credible electoral process to do this, good governance will now become an incentive for political office holders. If you want to return, if you want to remain relevant to the system, a credible election will not incentivize good governance. But as we speak, if we go into the next cycle of election, particularly in a country that is challenged in terms of security, in terms of economy, and even out of control corruption, if we go into the next round of election without one, a sanitized legal framework for the next electoral cycle, that will be operated by people of high, if not the highest level of integrity, people that are non-partisan, people that are experienced, people that are committed, that have a lifelong passion and commitment to good governance and credible electoral process. My fear is that if we repeat what I've described several as electoral banditry that has characterized our democratic experience so far, you are likely going to have administrative bandits in all tiers, arms of government. And my dear sister, when you have administrative bandits in power, their failure of leadership will not only sustain the bandits on our highways and our forests, but it will create more. And Nigeria might just, as predicted by many and as feared by many, might just become a case of a failed state. So the last attempt to salvage Nigeria and pull Nigeria from the brinks of state failure and maybe eventually state collapse is a credible electoral process going into the next round of election. This election is one like none other before it, because of the circumstance we find ourselves. We must be able to elect the best of us, put our best foot forward, into all offices, irrespective of political party affiliation, ethnicity, religion, or region of origin.
You know,
but to do this, we require not just that legal framework, but those that will operate, the legal framework to bring about the reality of the intent behind the electoral reform laws that we're all clamoring for.
Well, recruiting the best of us, will involve many things. It's going to involve talking about our recruitment process in the very first instance, whether or not the people who we consider the best of us will be coming forward in the very first place, or whether it's just for us to still have the electoral framework and perhaps even the best people with high integrity, having to deal with one of the male people, so to speak. There'll be questions there. But let me go back to the Electoral Act and also the operators of the Electoral Act. As we speak, I do not know that there is any criteria strictly spelled out, that this must be the criteria that people who will be called upon to fill the positions of those who operate our Electoral Act or who act as umpires must fulfill before they are elected. Do we have any such thing that spells it out?
Apart from the constitutional requirement that makes people eligible, you see, there's a difference between eligibility and qualification. Eligibility, or rather qualification, is simply what the Constitution says. Maybe the right age, the right level of educational qualifications, being a Nigerian, some of these superficial requirements. But eligibility, you now have to factor in the institution you're talking about in question. For example, it would be wrong to appoint an engineer as the chief medical director of Federal Medical Center in Abuja, any of the other health management institutions. Because, yes, he's qualified to be appointed, but because they're going to a health management institution, you need somebody that is eligible, somebody who has the special skill and all other extra constitutional qualifications that might not be clearly spelled out. You see, in the case of INEC, beyond just the mere qualifications, eligibility in this context will mean people that are non-partisan because of the nature of INEC. Non-partisan. People that have no affiliation with any political party. People that are simply out for good governance. And this must be very, very considered in making any of such appointments.
How do we begin to, non-partisan, it might be clear, because some people will say, okay, maybe it's not clear, because is it that you must never have been a member of a political party, or that you could have been a member of a political party, you're no longer a member of a political party? There'll be questions as to what partisan will really mean. In terms of all the other things, some people will say there's no way to test that if you're about good governance, for instance. How do you know that? Unless you're going to be digging into the person's history, and that will be if the person has served in any public administrative capacity that we can say this is this person we trust.
In addition to digging into that history, something came to the rescue of Nigeria when we had this conundrum or this dilemma of how to actually determine who is truly non-partisan. Between 2003 and 2007, the past administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo appointed people that were known to have partisan affiliations into various offices in INEC. And the result was that the 2007 election has gone down in history as perhaps one of the worst elections in the history of Nigeria, so much so that even the beneficiary denounced the process that brought him to power. And so the conversation started about reforms, electoral reforms. First, it was suggested that the judiciary should take over the responsibilities of conducting elections. INEC should be seconded to the judiciary. Still in the pursuit of that non-partisan nature of those that will operate the system. But a middle ground was actually reached between all of the contending ideas on how to achieve this important solution to what was ailing what ailed our electoral process. And so the issue of CSOs came up. We had credible CSOs and credible people that have been at the forefront of championing good governance, the cause of good governance through non-NGOs and CSOs. And some of these individuals participated in the struggle against the military. And when the military eventually handed over to civilians in 1999, they continued the struggle now towards achieving good governance, even with elected civilian democratic political leadership. They have been at the vanguard of good governance. And they do not pander to any political party. Their lifelong passion and ambition has been good governance through CSO engagements. And so it was decided to experiment with certain individuals from the CSO world. And that was how Jega, Professor Atahiru Jega, iconic Professor Atahiru Jega, was brought in from the academia, he had been a labor leader in the academia, and everybody knows him to be a passionate advocate for good governance at all spheres of his own influence. And he came along with certain individuals too from that background into the INEC management system. And we saw a marked improvement between 2011 now and 2015 in our electoral process. First, the first thing they did was to actually sanitize the register. You recall that before, we used to have Michael Jackson, we used to have Mike Tyson and co. in Nigeria's electoral register across the board. So even the register was not credible. So they backed on a credible voter register that would actually enhance the credibility of the elections. And a lot of other reforms were carried out because they had no interest in any political party. They were immune from political party influence.
So isn't it taken for granted, and I don't want to take away from what they've done and the progress that has been made, but if we're to look at a trajectory from the appointment of Professor Jega up till now, I mean, with the appointment of Professor Mahmood as well, isn't it taken for granted as to the sort of persons we're now seeking in those sort of offices?
And that is where our operation is coming in. We've moved gradually from appointing politicians into INEC as either recs or federal commissioners, national commissioners. Now, there's a contestation now between, okay, the CSO world and partisan politicians. So we are beginning to have this fear that perhaps we are about to revert to the pre-2011 era when positions in INEC, important positions like resident electoral commissioners and national commissioners, are filled with people with either near or remote partisan interest. And that will derail our electoral process and create a crisis that we may not be able to contain as a nation. Because when people lose faith in both the electoral process, the laws governing it, and those that are actually running the system, they might resort to self-help. Nigeria is already challenged. You have a situation where we're having shared sovereignty with non-state actors that are heavily armed. People are beginning to turn away from the state. The state is gradually losing legitimacy. And we're saying the only thing that can reverse it, that can reverse this trend, is for people to key in and have faith and confidence in the electoral process enough to be able to participate freely and accept an outcome that they believe is reflective of the popular will of the people. But when you now begin to populate INEC as feared by people that have remote or near or perceived partisan interests or affiliated to political parties has been speculated across board, we may not have that confidence in the electoral process enough not to challenge the outcome or even to participate. So if you want people to participate and accept the outcome of an election and work closely as citizens going forward to rebuild what was left of our Nigerian country, it is important to begin the process now of not only putting in place the adequate legal frameworks to actually sanitize the electoral process, but we need, most importantly, those that will operate the laws. In fact, if you have credible people manning INEC, people of integrity, and in this instance, people that have the experience, because this election is very crucial. And it's less than a year to the election, or about a year to the election. You can't afford to have people on the job. And so we need people that have both experience, people that have what it takes, that are already set in their ways as people that have performed so well within the system to man the election going forward, because this election is going to be very decisive in our history as a country.
Let's take this conversation to Lagos now. I'm sure my colleagues have questions for you. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Makwe. One of the questions that comes to my mind as you were speaking earlier about this whole thing, electoral management process, is the role that people can play. Yes, there are people at the top who are supposed to get one or two things done, especially talking about this INEC national commissioners. But in this electoral management process, not just the voting, not the politicking, what role can the people play? I'm wondering if we have not delayed too long the point of this INEC national commissioners until now? Is there a role that the people generally can play in the run-up to this point where?
You see, ordinarily, we shouldn't be having a conversation about how to appoint people into INEC. I mean, it should have been a given that anybody who should serve in an important body such as INEC should be somebody of unimpeachable integrity without partisan affiliation, because INEC is supposed to be independent and immune from political interference. That is the very nature of INEC in our democracy. But beyond advocacy, such as we are doing now, those in government, those in authority, the National Assembly, those in the executive, are actually part of the Nigerian people. It's a collective destiny we have with those in power. And the appeal will be for those in power to please overlook or look beyond their current privileges as incumbents and look at the larger picture. It is in their own interest. It is in our own interest and our collective interest, as a matter of fact, that the right things be done. We are all going to be beneficiaries, directly or indirectly, of a credible electoral process. And so for
when
example,
you say my apologies, Mr. Dahiru, just a second. When you say it's our collective responsibility that the right thing be done, the question is, what is the right thing here? Because that is subjective. One of the questions a number of people have asked is, if we're going to have INEC commissioners and we want people who have proven integrity, where better to have proven them than within INEC itself? One of the people that has been recommended now has served in the electoral management body for many, many years. Is there anything wrong really in having maybe a law or a system or a policy that promotes people up the ranks so that the institution is stronger for that purpose over the years?
Thank you very much. It is important to first not appoint partisan people into INEC. Now, beyond not appointing partisan people into INEC, yes, for the purpose of retaining and sustaining institutional memory, there are very credible individuals in INEC that have distinguished themselves over the years as people that are immune for political interference and have discharged their duties as an unbiased umpire in every responsibility that they have undertaken as electoral managers. And they abound within the system. And that's what some of us are saying. In addition to not appointing partisan people, we may not be able to afford bringing people that will begin to learn on the job, particularly when a crucial election such as election 2023 is approaching fast. And so it will be advisable to look inwards into the system, even as a way of strengthening that institution, to identify individuals that can be elevated to the next level of their responsibility to continue to carry out the good work they've been doing within INEC. You will agree with me that INEC has conducted very credible elections in the recent past. Very credible elections, despite the shortcomings, despite our reservations. We've seen credible elections being conducted across board. And the individuals responsible for this should be elevated to fill some of the vacancies first. And we are even going to go outside of INEC to get extra hands. We will also strongly recommend people of CSO backgrounds to come in. For example, it's a bit curious that somebody like Professor Ikechukwu Ibiano, the national commissioner that actually supervised elections in Anambra, is not being offered the opportunity of a renewed term to continue the good work he's been doing. He was one of those who actually championed the reform that Jega carried out in INEC that improved substantially our electoral management system to such a point that by 2015, an incumbent lost an election to an opposition. And that was a signpost that our democracy has matured beyond just being a crawling democracy. He was a technical advisor to Professor Jega. He has discharged responsibility in Anambra, for example. And you will agree with me that the way the Anambra election was conducted went a long way to douse tension in that state, because the outcome was generally acceptable to the people. Now, you also have Professor M.J. Kunan in the system. He's still the technical advisor to the incumbent chairman, as was the case with Professor Jega, one would have expected that somebody like that, who was part of this build-up, this reform, this all-important reform over the years, should have been offered the opportunity to also serve as a national commissioner or a resident electoral commissioner, as the case might have
But some people say we don't want to take the prerogative away from the president. It's still his prerogative, isn't it?
No, it's our duty as citizens to have this conversation and set an agenda for our leaders. Because whereas it is his prerogative, this is an interest for all of us. It's an interest, it's a thing of concern for all of us. You have a lot of them. Are you talking about AVM Ahmed Mazu, the national commissioner who supervised elections in Taraba, in Adamawa, and some other states in the northeast? And he came out, with a very transparent process that was acceptable to all. It is the same thing with Mike Higini, for example. I'm particularly worried about Mike Higini because he's a person of very special interest to me. I say this because we have followed him throughout his days in the civil society space. And when he was appointed into INEC, some of us felt, hope this will not, change his character, the integrity we know him for. Hope this will not actually transform him into an establishment person. But he has defied all odds to improve at every sphere of responsibility he was given of the electoral process. The recent being the prosecution of a high-profile electoral offender in Akwa Ibom, who is now serving a 3-year jail term. So it tells you that there are people like this within the system that should be given opportunity for the sake of our electoral redemption and our democratic rebirth.
Well, we certainly will keep tabs on the matter as we also keep tabs on the fate of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. We have to thank you so much this morning for coming on Sunrise Daily. Majid Dahiru is a columnist for the dailies and has been speaking to us here in our Abuja studios. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much for having me.
We have a few mails and tweets. Yes, I like the sound of that. Let's take a look at this first one from Dixon Eka, who says, as the National Assembly resumes today, I urge them to save Nigeria from perpetual poor and unacceptable electoral processes by overriding the president's veto and passing the electoral bill. Direct primary will ensure healthy competition among political parties. It will ensure that political parties have clean and competitive databases. Direct primary will enable wider participation of electorate in electoral processes. It will reduce vote buying. The advantages of direct primary are far more than that of indirect primaries. So let's try this, and if it fails, we can still amend before 2027.
Seems to have a bright idea. Says the National Assembly should not wait any further for President Buhari's assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. They should go ahead and override the president's veto. The majority of Nigerian electorate that elected him to power want the bill passed, and in this regard, the president has no choice.
I'll take a look at this one from Louis Afolabi, still on the Electoral Act Amendment, saying, permit me to say that in all these debates about direct primaries, we have not heard any National Assembly member report on the consensus opinion of his or her constituents on the subject matter. Are the people no more relevant in democracy, which is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people? I therefore appeal to National Assembly to remove this contentious portion of the bill, pass it, and forward same to the President for assent to avoid a repeat of 2018 when it became too late for implementation, hence the President withholding his assent.
AGK says, I agree with the liberation of options for party primaries. Political parties can then determine whichever mode of party primaries is convenient for them. This is a democracy. The National Assembly should please do the needful and rescind the amended electoral bill for the President's assent as soon as possible. Nigerians are watching and waiting.
And the tweets we have this morning responding to the question we asked on Sunrise Daily as to what qualities should persons who handle Nigeria's electoral process in terms of INEC's resident electoral commissioners have. And New Nigeria has this as ability to resist temptation from politicians, honesty, logistics, and administrative background. And Edozie Nkechi says non-biased, patriotic, assertive, team player, and God-fearing. Well, we have to thank you for your contributions this morning. Just let you know that we're back on Twitter, so you can tweet at us at Sunrise Daily Now. It's the handle to use. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusu.
Okado Kikili is saying thank you.
Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.